Greetings and hello. Hello out there. Hello again. I feel you now. Lissa Jones-Lofgren has served in a variety of roles comprising her 20 years plus of experience. Jones served for a decade as the executive director of the nonprofit organization African American Family Services and is fluent in best practices standards for nonprofits as well. She embraces transparency, has a high core communication value. As a business owner, Jones' firm focused exclusively on developing strategies for greater equity and inclusion in the workplace as well as for educational institutions, both public and private. Lissa is a host of the popular radio show Urban Agenda, a political public affairs show devoted to historic education and its parallel impact on communities of color in today's environment. It is my privilege and honor, and please help me introduce Lissa Jones-Lofgren.
Happy MLK, Duluth. I'm delighted to be here. This young man said this was going to go down a little bit. Are you going to? Can you take my volume down? Sunday, September 15th, 1963, 1 month after Dr. King delivered his I Have a Dream speech, the 16th Street Baptist Church was the site of a bombing that killed 4 little girls. This time of year, when we celebrate Dr. King's holiday, we talk a lot about him having a dream, but talk very little about him having a full dream of inclusion for the United States of America. When Dr. King was marching in the streets as our young people are marching for Black Lives Matter today, there were many who disagreed with his tactics. Clergy who sent him letters suggesting that he should wind down, that he should wait. And Dr. King wrote them a letter titled The Letter from the Birmingham Jail, when he reminded us that the word wait to the American Negro has almost always meant never. We need to get very clear in the United States that the problem we've had since 1617, the kidnap of Africans for the purpose of building wealth across Western Europe and the United States, is the contradiction we live in a time when Thomas Jefferson was writing down these wonderful ideals. He was also writing notes from the state of Virginia, suggesting that African Americans are inherently inferior because we are born Black, and for no other reason. We talk about Dr. King's dream in a way that is wonderful and lovely, but we don't talk about Dr. King's militancy. His work against poverty is ultimately what got him killed. When we think about the ideas that Dr. King espoused for inclusion and diversity, we must admit that we are struggling even today with the very realities that were set up so long ago when we couldn't have a conversation about whether or not Africans chose to come to the shores of the United States. Instead, we talk about things in veiled ways. We've used new language that's really old language, like urban and rural, to mean white and Black. In the state of Minnesota, we struggled, as many other states did, with drug epidemics that were largely perceived to be Black drugs, like crack cocaine. And Minnesota's response was lock 'em up. Bill Clinton's 3 strikes and you're out. And today, when heroin is largely considered to be a white kid's problem, they want all of us to carry pens to save kids from overdosing. Of course, I would never disagree as a grandmother and mother with carrying such a pen to save lives. What I disagree with is that we value one life more than the other, the same way that we suggest the southern states do. In the North, we have it just as bad. We call it Minnesota nice. It allows us to have conversations about everything but race. It allows us to suggest that Black people in particular are in such dire straits of our own doing because we are sitting on the stool of Dr. King's do-nothingness, because we wouldn't get up and do anything, because the Congress says they built this. But if you know one thing about history, you will know that there could be no America except for the backs of black people. That James Baldwin said, "We built this country on the rape of our women and the murder of our children for absolutely nothing." It is time that African Americans be recognized, not in the month of February, not in Dr. King's holiday, but in every single month of the year for the contributions we have made to this world. In 2016, there should be no first African American anything, because we've been here since America was before America was America. Any time that this country has moved closer to the ideals of its democracy, it has been on the backs of black people and the shedding of our blood. The civil rights movement, black people. Were white people there? Absolutely. Absolutely. Did we need them? Absolutely. Do we need you now? Absolutely. But do not forget that it was black people, black children, who poured out of those schools in Birmingham in 1963. It was black children who took to the streets, even when their parents were afraid, as in Black Lives Matter today, to say no more. You can say what you want to say about whether or not you agree or disagree with the tactics of Black Lives Matter, but it has kept the police from killing us one at a time almost every day. You can say what you want about shutting down highways 94 and 35, but you can guess, you can only guess and hope what you're going to get if the world is different, but you know what you're going to get if the world doesn't change. You're going to get just what we've got right here. We need to get the idea that no one can do this work for us. Dr. King talked about the idea that no Johnsonian or Lincolnian Emancipation Proclamation could do this for us. That it's work we're going to have to take the United States to task to do because they've had, frankly, 400 years to get hip. And either you agree that they are absolutely stupid, which I don't agree, or you got to agree that we know what's going on and we've lacked the will to do something about it. I'm proud of Duluth for erecting the memorial to Jackson Clayton McGee. I don't know why I'm so tongue-tied today. I need to get myself together. For the Jackson Clayton McGee Memorial, I'm extremely proud because it recognizes what happened here in 1920. What we need to recognize is that modern-day lynching is happening in 2016, that our children are as at great a risk or greater a risk than at times of segregation when we could at least, at a minimum, keep our babies safe in our home communities. Now I send out my husband, my father, my children, my grandchildren, and I worry. I worry whether if they accidentally took a lifesaver and the police killed them, whether someone would question whether their life mattered. I wonder, as we sit around the table at Soul Food Sunday, how I'm going to explain to them how to stay safe. I wonder why my son at 27 is going to have the same conversation with his son at 16 that I had with him at 16 about driving and walking and biking and breathing while black. We need to be honest about this thing called race. This idea that somebody set up a long time ago that anybody in the world was white was an immoral idea when it was conceived. There are no such thing as white people. White was invented for the purpose of classifying people according to race in 1700, for the purpose of making some people suffer so other people could feel better and do better. And despite all kinds of amendments to the Constitution and all kinds of public policy moves, not much has changed, practically speaking, for the day-to-day life of African Americans. So when I ask myself the question, why are the young people in the street? Why are they shutting things down? Because the alternative for them is literally death. And until we are honest about the fact that a man or woman of any hue who can't find a job, who can't feed their family, will do whatever it takes to make sure that that happens. That's not a condition of black people, that's a condition of humanity. We need to have conversations with our children that teach them the value of African Americans and our contribution in this state and the world abroad every single day. We shouldn't wait for 28 days in February to talk about what black people have contributed. The FBI sent Dr. King a letter. They suggested to him that he commit suicide or they were going to tell his wife. that he was an adulterer. I want you to think about the man that America now celebrates as our king, at least in public on this day, was not considered a king in his own time and context. I wonder to myself whether the young leaders who are emerging in the Black communities in Minnesota will also find themselves on the right side of history. But my question to you, what are you doing? You see, when we sit in the NAACP meetings in Minneapolis and every single person on the NAACP is reporting about the work we're doing, there's always somebody saying, you guys should do this. When we're out protesting in the street when it's 18 degrees below zero, there's always somebody saying, you guys need to do this. So I'm asking, what are you doing? How will you show up? In 1908, Ida B. Wells co-founded the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And one of its primary goals was to track the number of lynchings happening in the United States because they were happening so frequently that you couldn't get it out fast enough. We didn't have Twitter. We didn't have YouTube. But today we have the videotapes of Jamar Clark and Laquan McDonald. And we ask ourselves, if justice is to come, why won't they release the tape? If the truth is on your side, then just release the tape. And until they release the tape, we have to stay in the streets. We have to march until we can't march anymore. We have to speak until we can't speak anymore. We have to teach until we can't teach anymore. We have to sing until we can't sing anymore. We have to do whatever it takes to resist the oppression that has kept us all bound. In case you think oppression is the enemy of Black people or brown people alone, get the idea that we are bound in this piece together. That whether you are white or Black or Native or whatever you want to call yourself, if somebody has their foot on your neck, nobody can move. We wait so long to speak our truth. I turn on the television, even the radio, even with satellite. Black people are not represented fully anywhere. It is suggested that we've been 3/5 of a human being that allows people to see us through the eyes of the black and white doll experiment. Doctors Kenneth and Mamie Bancroft Clark in the 1950s decided to test what integration would do to the minds of young Black children. And what they found was sadly what Kerry Davis found in 2006 in New York City on the same question. 15 of the 21 kids interviewed preferred the white doll because they believed it was the good doll, because they believed it was the pretty doll. No child should wake up in the morning and not be able to see themselves represented in everything that they are doing. Because after all, when we look up, we always see white. We need to be clear that if we are going to do something about this, it's going to take more than sitting in a justice hall. It's going to take for you to lift your voice in all the places where you are gathered, in the places where it doesn't feel safe, in the places where white people gather, where there are no brown people at all. They still exist in Minnesota. We need you to be courageous in those spaces. We need you to teach people that we deserve to live, because this problem of ours, this problem of race, they figured it out in 1967 in the Moynihan Report and the Kerner Commission Report. In response to the riots, they call them, I call them rebellions, insurrections against oppression, but they called them riots. That the problem was never about Black racism, because racism is a verb, power plus prejudice, the ability to affect the quality of someone's daily life, so it's almost impossible for Black people to be racist. So when you think about the ideas of race, the Kerner Commission, the Moynihan Report, and many others talked about the issue being white racism. That you have to be honest with yourself. That if the world were set up differently, you could be up here rather than me. And you could be celebrated 28 days out of 365. And you could be reminded that your ancestors never contributed anything because this country is so ignorant about its own history. I know that this is a tough conversation to have on Dr. King's holiday when we feel very good and kumbaya, but if we can't tell the whole truth, there's no use speaking half of it anyway. Now, I do want to say a couple things about what's going right. Black people are taking back to the streets. We are demanding that people see us. Minnesota's nice renders us invisible, except when it comes to the promise of money for fixing black problems, the Negro burden, which is also part of the myth of white supremacy. Our young people are unabashedly unafraid. In fact, they might be terrified, but you wouldn't know it when you're out there marching with them day to day. When you see black men who are not given the chance to have a job based on their names on a resume, or the number of times that the criminal justice system decided it needed to see them again and again and again until they're almost unemployable. When you saw them handing out blankets and scarves and gloves, and you saw that they wanted to be part of society and contribute, you could no longer deny that absolutely every black life matters. I don't know about you, but when I pass this world, if someone's going to reheat my sins, it's going to be a very long service. So we can't decide whether or not somebody's life matters based on how they live or one interaction they had or what the propaganda says about the value of black life. We are going to have to do the work that has not yet been done. We're going to have to finish it. We're going to have to meet this ugly thing called race, look it straight in the eye, and call it the liar it is. We are going to have to go out to every child and remind them that it doesn't matter how much money their parents make, or what their address is, or what they look like, but their lives matter to us. We need to know that there are people in this community. I've seen some kind of poverty here, like I haven't even seen at home. There are people who are waiting for us to wake up, to do the right thing, to say the right thing, to resist, to make opportunity happen. But all of us who decide to sit on the stool of do-nothingness because we are comfortable, because we're scared to lose our job, what if it's your baby who's next? With all these children of mixed ethnicity here, that's something that would affect everyone in this room. So I want you to do what Dr. King always wanted you to do, to reach down into the inner resources of your own soul, to grab a pen and to sign in ink your own Emancipation Proclamation. Free yourself. We are the people we've been waiting for. This work will not be easy, or it would have already been done. But this time, we have to have the courage to see it all the way through. Past the Congress, past the president, past all of it, into the common daily life, in the way we are concerned about our brother or sister. Dr. King is cited as saying noon on Sunday morning is the most segregated hour in America because we're worshiping one God through a whole bunch of different lenses, but we're not doing it together. So it's hard to sing all the songs and do all the things if day to day we are not willing to live it. Today you marched, some of you came here like me and didn't march, but marched in to this area that you could do what you could, where you could. I'm asking that you do that every day. That wherever you see injustice, you bring it up. That you don't push it over to your brother, that you don't use passive-aggressive Minnesota nice and put it on Facebook, that you actually stand up. I thought it fitting to go to a place with Dr. King that many people don't go because we're so busy with having a dream and marching on Washington that we forget Dr. King was a whole person, that he went through a lot of despair, that he called Mahalia Jackson to sing him through when he couldn't make it through the night. That kind of resilience exists today in our black communities. We can pick up the phone, say a kind word, or frankly in Minnesota, just walk past each other and nod would be enough. Anything. Dr. King eulogized the 4 little girls who were killed at the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing. And while it was a eulogy, as only Dr. King could do, he brought his brilliance to it. He brought his military speak to it. And I want to close these remarks by telling you that I'm proud of you, Duluth, because your mayor came to me today. And she not only welcomed me warmly, as did the NAACP and their beautiful faces, but she said, we have a lot of work to do. Mayor, I'm included in that we. And as Dr. King saw fit to say in 1963, 1 month after the March on Washington, the crazy contradictions of this thing we call race. They died nobly. They are the martyred heroines of a holy crusade for freedom and human dignity. And so this afternoon, in a real sense, they have something to say to each of us in their death. They have something to say to every minister of the gospel who has remained silent behind the safe security of stained glass windows. They have something to say to every politician who has fed his constituents with the stale bread of hatred and the spoiled meat of racism. They have something to say to a federal government that has compromised with the undemocratic practices of Southern Dixiecrats and the blatant hypocrisy of right-wing Northern Republicans. They have something to say to every Negro who has passively accepted the evil system of segregation and who has stood on the sidelines in a mighty struggle for justice. They say to each of us, black and white, that we must substitute courage for caution. They say to us that we must not be concerned merely about who murdered them, but about the system, the way of life, the philosophy which produced the murderers. Their death says to us that we must work passionately and unrelentingly for the realization of the American dream. Because if life, liberty, and the pursuit was promised to each of us, there should be none of us in this great democracy who are still looking at checks marked insufficient funds. Happy MLK, Duluth.